Welcome back to another episode of the Chief Audit Executive Briefing. Welcome back, my friends. And this week, I want to pick up kind of the discussion that we've been having for the last couple of weeks. And that's around budgeting and kind of going from a cost center to an investment center. One where we're actually showing a return on investment for what we're doing. That will make it much easier for you to be able to get the resources and budget that you need. Now, before we get into that, though, I just want to talk to you just for a minute or so about the Chief Audit Executive Forum. Now, I know a lot of you are interested in joining, but several people kind of reached out to me and said, Jason, now's not really the right time. And, maybe it was a little bit outside of some people's price range. So I took that feedback and I've looked at the program because honestly, folks, I made a mistake. So I'm here to apologize for that because really what I was trying to do is create a program that was just absolutely amazing. But the problem was I was creating the equivalent of a Ferrari when many of you didn't need a Ferrari or couldn't afford a Ferrari. So I've gone back and taken a look at the program and have modified it. I've actually, made it so that it's easier to join, but gives you the same outcome. And so the reason that I'm telling you this is, again, if, when I was talking about it before and we opened up, if you were saying, it's a little bit too much for me, or I don't really have the time, because again, I apologize. I was sending out some of these messages during one of the busiest times of the year for many of you that work in a publicly traded company and have a calendar year end. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you just do me a favor, down below is the link. Just click on the link, go out and take a look at it. And if it's something that sounds like it's a fit for you, just click on the link, schedule a time for us to talk. We'll just set aside 30 minutes and just go through and talk about what you're going through, your situation, and we'll see if it's something that's right for you. Like I said, it's much easier to join. And in fact, if some of you are a little concerned, let me tell you this. If you can afford to go to a conference or a seminar during the year and pay for travel expenses, you can afford to be a part of the Chief Audit Executive Forum, where you not only get support for just a couple days, but you get support for the whole year. So go out, check it out, and just schedule a time for us to talk. It's no obligation, just to get on the phone for 30 minutes, see what you are going through right now, and whether or not this is something that you would like to join. Okay, so now let's switch gears and go back and let's put on our investment manager hat. Now, there's lots of reasons why I wear hats, and maybe at some point I'll get into it, but one reason is I can make punny jokes like that. So we're going to switch. We're going to put on our investment manager hat and think about, again, carrying this discussion forward on how we can become seen as and act like an investment center. Okay. Now, one of the things about this is, and it's kind of a tie-in with one of the earlier messages that I shared with you, but a lot of times we will budget for things and then something comes up during the year and it would be a better use of our time and money to spend it on something else. So as a simple example, right? Let's say that, in your budget, you put in, take training is an easy one, right? That you had in your mind that you were going to go to maybe these two conferences this next year, or you were going to go to a conference and to a seminar on a particular topic. You'd set that aside as a line item in your budget, and it totaled up to whatever your total budget is for training. Let's say $100,000, just to keep it simple. Now, during the year, things may change. And so even though you have scheduled or budgeted to go to those two particular events, it's completely within your control to say, you know what, things have changed. I think I need this more than what I had planned at the beginning of the year. In fact, that's exactly what you should do. You should not set a budget a year or 18 months ago and then never change from it. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's going to be opportunities that come along during the year where that money could be better used, or you could get a higher return on that investment. So again, if something else comes along during the year and you decide, you know what, instead of going to that, maybe that seminar on a particular topic that I was planning to, it would be better for me to use that money for something else because I can get a higher return on investment. Okay, it's okay for you to do that. You have complete control over that. Again, the idea behind the budgets is to make sure that you are staying within your total budget so that the company can manage its cash flow and the other budgets that it has to deal with. Okay, now let's talk just briefly about ROI, okay, return on investment. The more that you can start thinking about yourself as an investment center and trying to calculate the return on investment of what you're doing, the more others in your organization are going to see you that way as well. Now, sometimes people say, well, I don't really know how to do that. Well, I'm going to give you two really kind of simple examples. And as I told you before, my team's putting together a more detailed resource on this that we'll have out probably within the next month that goes into more detail, but I want to give you some information right now so that you can get started. So the first one, back at one of the companies when I was Chief Audit Executive, we went out to one of our mines. So we had mines where we would dig, material out of the earth and take out the information or the product that we needed to go into our product. Okay, so we were out at this mine, and it was a smaller operation in comparison to the total company. But as we got out there, it was a little bit isolated, right? But we hadn't been out there for a while. There were a couple of reasons why we decided, from a risk standpoint, that we needed to go out there. So we went out and we started going through the audit. We were looking, one of the things we were looking at was accounts payable, because we had just implemented an ERP system. A lot of the processes in accounts payable had changed, and we just wanted to make sure that the mine was actually doing this as well. So as we went through, we started looking at it. We started to realize, as we mapped out the process, that there was a lot of duplication in this accounts payable process. So I remember sitting down with the AP manager, and the team had come back and kind of said what was going on. And I said, as we look at the process, you're having an accounts payable clerk do a vouching. So they're looking at the purchase order, the receiver, and the invoice, doing a three-way match on that. So you're having one of your clerks do that. Then you're having another supervisor reperform that match. And then the accounts payable manager would also review that before any payments were issued. So 3 different people were actually going through and doing this manual three-way match. And so I said, we noticed that you're doing this three-way match 3 times with people. Why are you doing that? And so she responds back, well, it's because it's our policy that we do that. We have a policy at the mine level that we do that. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting. Do you realize that we just spent, it was about $30 million on this ERP system? Yeah. And we're using it, but we just go through and do this manual match anyway. Okay. And here's what happened, folks. The system was already doing the match. There was no reason for 3 separate people to do an additional match, three-way match. And so as we started looking at that, and explained to her, well, did you realize that the system's doing this? Yeah, but we have this policy. Well, do you know you don't need to have the policy anymore? In fact, corporate wide, we've kind of changed the procedure on how we do that. So we went back and we looked at it, and we kind of figured out that based on the workload in that particular department, because of that duplication, there was really one person in their department that they no longer needed. if they just stopped doing that three-way match, manual three-way match 3 times that the system was already doing, they could actually reduce their head count in that department by 1 person. So that's a very easy one to calculate return on investment. I think in this, we went back and we looked at the person, what their total gross wages were, benefits, load everything up. And I remember it was somewhere around a $50,000 to $60,000 annual investment for this person. So at the end of that audit, on my little list that I was creating, I could go back and say, hey, on that particular audit, we came up with a recommendation: change your policy, do it the way corporate suggests that we do it. And by doing that, what would end up happening is you would be able to reduce costs by $50,000 or $60,000. So that audit had a return for that particular recommendation of $50,000 to $60,000. Okay. It took a little bit longer on that than I expected. So this next one I'm going to make short. But another audit that we did, there was, again, a reason for us to believe, because of some of the stuff we had found in our retirement benefits, that some of our employees may be undocumented, meaning they were in the United States illegally. They'd maybe submitted some fictitious information pretending that they had the right to work, but did not. And so we went in, and again, because we noticed that that was a high enough risk, and the Immigration and Naturalization Service, who monitors that, was actually doing a lot of enforcement actions around that in our particular part of the country. So we went in, we did the work, and we realized that, part of the problem was we didn't have some of the documentation in the files that we needed to. So there was a recommendation to update that and to verify and re-get copies of all of these people's documentation to be able to work in the country. And some of the people had been working for us for maybe 30 years, and so we had to go back and kind of get stuff updated. Now, the reason I bring that one up again is, well, how do you calculate the return on investment on something like that? It seems like you're, now making a recommendation for the organization to go out and do a lot more work, because we're going to have to set up a process. Somebody's got to double check every time somebody starts that we have the information. There's going to be time to go back and make sure that all, 11,000 employees' files are actually updated the way that they're supposed to be. So again, we had to calculate what it was. So we went out, we calculated if the government had come in, if they found the same results we did in our audit, we could see very quickly what the fine would be. If that percentage of our employees really didn't have this piece of paper in their file, that government regulator could do what's called a paperwork violation. They could charge us for every single piece of paper that we did not have in the file, regardless of if the person was, had the right to work or not. They could fine us. So it was very easy for us to come up with a range, and I believe the range ended up being somewhere between about $1.5 to $3 million that they could fine us. So again, you can go back to management and show, look, as a result of our audit, if the government comes in, they would probably give us a $1.5 to $3 million fine. It was a range that we were dealing with. So that made it very easy for management to say, okay, well, what are you suggesting that we do? Well, we probably should hire somebody, go through, change the processes. We talked about some of the different things, figured out that it was probably a $100,000 investment to do the work, but the benefit was we could avoid a $1.5 to $3 million fine. Now, for the executive management in our company, that's a pretty easy decision to make, right? Hey, if we spend $100,000, we could avoid at least $1.5 million worth of fine. Boom, slam dunk, no issue, right? And what that does is it also showed, because I added it to my list, hey, on that particular audit, we saved the company a potential $1.5 million, right? Now that went a long way in justifying the whole budget of my department just from that one particular project. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this week, but again, I want you to put on your investment manager hat and start thinking about how you can quantify and start seeing the return on investment that you are actually providing to your company. It's going to make a huge difference. With that, my friends, I will see you next week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk later.